Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Casual Fridays podcast. My name is Art Burns, and it's a day late, but hopefully not $1 short here. This week has been really very strange for me. My son's 12th birthday was the other day, so we had a whole, because my son has become such an avid hockey player, we had his birthday party at 9 a.m. In the form of a what do you call it, like a open ice, right, where you play hockey. It's called stick and puck, where it's just open ice, and for an hour and a half the kids get to knock the puck around, and then we took him to IHOP after that for chocolate chip pancakes as his like little birthday party. And so anyway, it was very strange to do the birthday party in the morning like that for a bunch of 12-year-old boys, but it was really fun, but it definitely threw everything off. So I apologize. I'm here on Saturday doing the Casual Fridays podcast. I'm sorry for any one of you who was looking for this to drop yesterday. Please accept my apology. Please forgive me, and please know that I will try to avoid this from happening in the future. Okay. That said, welcome back. It's great to be here with you today. And today I want to talk about something that's super, like, absolutely vital to, I mean, in my opinion, it's my worldview. It's my worldview, my politics, my spirituality, everything. Okay. At least the first step of all of it. Right. And when I work with people, with organizations, in the workplace or as individuals, this topic is always one of the most important topics that we cover. So I'm going to stop teasing you now and tell you what the topic is, and then we'll keep going. What we're talking about here is empathy. Now, it's a big word, empathy, right? And you have this sort of spiritual notion of empathy, that you have empaths and people who are specifically, magically empowered with this empathy or endowed with this empathy, which I'm not arguing that. I'm not saying that there are not people who are naturally, empathic on a very deep level. I think that's absolutely possible and true. However, I also know that empathy is something that's very, very basic, very, very simple. And it's founded just like all the other things that I talk about here in this podcast and my other podcast, Showing Up to Life. This is all scientifically measured at this point, empathy included, as well as compassion, as well as kindness, all of these things. We understand what's happening in the brain and the body when we're functioning in a place of empathy. And so I want to take it out of that mystical, I want to demystify it a little bit and bring it down to the reality, okay? Bring it down to what it really means and how is it that important, whether we're talking about a group or we're talking about individual. Now, then the reason why I say that, and this is very, very important, right? Because a group is a group of individuals, right? And so while I could sit here in front of a room or where you are in front of a room full of your coworkers and teach you all this thing as a group, it's still on an individual basis that you all are going to learn and practice and cultivate the skills, right? So it's but empathy again is all about the interpersonal experiences. Right. So that's where what I teach, when I do teach people in groups or individuals, we do two sets of learning, right? We have a learning that is intrapersonal, internal, right? Our own judgment, our own, thought processes, our own tendencies, our own habits, mental habits and such. Right. But then there's the interpersonal, right? Because they're both very important. They're both vital. Now, again, because a group like where you work is a group of individuals, it's very important that it's very beneficial if all the individuals are doing the intrapersonal work and then also doing the interpersonal work, right? Which is to say, again, the internal work, the inner work of mindfulness and non-judging awareness and acceptance and letting go of the constructs and whatever attachments we have. It's very, very important. But here's the thing. If we practice one or the other, we eventually get there to the other, right? So if you are only doing the interpersonal practices, eventually you're going to start getting that internal benefit as well. The only thing is, though, if you can work on both, it's going to be much more effective. Okay, and that's me as a coach telling you that, okay? Because I've seen it happen, and I know what happens, and I've again, it's not ambiguous, okay? So anyway, let's talk about empathy. Now, interestingly, there's actually, there's the one sort of empathy that we all know of, right? What I mean by that is that there's the sort of, when we say the word empathy, there's a certain, aspect of empathy that we're referring to there, right? But there's actually many types of empathy. And me, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this podcast so much, but on my Showing Up to Life podcast, I talk about it all the time, about how I've studied with Dan Siegel, who is a world-renowned neurobiologist who is, really, in my opinion, he's one of the greatest minds alive right now, right? We're so lucky to have him in the world, and I highly recommend you seek out some of his books and some of his content, because it's really amazing. So anyway, I'm going to post a link in the description. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that. Maybe I won't. But anyway, there's a video that you can find on YouTube. Let's do it this way. Of Dan Siegel. If you search up on YouTube, Dan Siegel, Siegel, 5 types of empathy. Okay, and it's like a 10-minute video. I highly recommend you watch that, okay? But I'm going to go through the types of empathy here with you, and I'm going to tell you why they're so important, okay? And really, you can listen to it from Dan's mouth or from my mouth. I guess it's, certainly not the same, but we're going to give you the same information on this one. But anyway, so the first type of empathy is that sort of empathy that we, at least in my understanding and my belief, that when people say empathy, they're talking about this first type of empathy, which is what we would call emotional resonance or empathic resonance, okay? Which is essentially just the ability to feel another. Right? Now, this is not something that is a concept of the mind. This is an actual biological functioning that is measurable, okay? That's been studied, really, really in depth. In the video, Dan mentions a woman named Tanya Singer, who's done incredible work in this area. In Germany, I believe she is. Anyway, empathic resonance or emotional resonance is, again, just the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. Like we can sense that somebody's got something going on, right? And sometimes it's not so clear on what they're feeling, but we feel something. And now that's the thing. The more we cultivate the skill of empathy, the finer and more clear we can start to understand that what exactly the other person is feeling. Because sometimes something might look like anger, but it's really grief, right? And so this type of empathy is super important, right? The most beautiful way I've heard it described is your pain in my heart, which is really beautiful. However, that description is a little bit deceiving, because empathy doesn't only mean feeling one's pain, as we're going to say in the fifth type of empathy that I'm going to mention here, 5th out of 5, that empathy is feeling whatever is there. It's not just the pain. It's not just the pleasure or the joy. It's whatever is there, including, sometimes people just seem like they're, you're not you're quiet. You're for lack of a better word, you're dull today, where you're usually very bright and exciting, right? So it's a very universal feeling, okay? So that's that first type of empathy, which is again, empathic resonance or emotional resonance, right? That resonating action that's happening between us, between any two people who are with each other, as long as they're open to it. Now, we're going to get back into the individual practice in a second and why that's so important. The second type of empathy is perspective taking. The ability to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. If I am this person, how am I seeing me? How am I seeing this circumstance? How can I put myself in their perspective and try to see the world through their eyes? As Dan says in the video, imagine a world that we all just did that, right? And imagine a workplace where we all just did that. Imagine every single moment of, moment by moment in your workplace, you were, consciously and intentionally trying to see the circumstances from the other perspective. Now, it's not always applicable, but what I'm saying is that if you were able to consistently do that, and everybody within the workplace was able to consistently do that, imagine not only the reduction in mistakes and miscommunications, right? But think of the harmony that would exist in the workplace. I mean, could you even imagine that? That's really heavy. So now the third type of empathy is called cognitive empathy, right? Which is kind of taking that idea of the perspective taking, but kind of going a little deeper with it, which is to say, can I factor in to this perspective? Can I understand the way that this person gets to that perspective? Can I understand that their background, their memories, their judgment, their emotional state right now, how all of that is impacting their thought process to the point that they're getting to this point of the perspective that I'm taking? If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. And so that cognitive empathy is, again, it's deeper, and it's really, it's kind of taking into account the fact that we all have these judgments. We all have bad, difficult days. We all have, nights where we don't sleep, and this impacts what we say and what we do. Yeah? All right. The fourth type of empathy is empathic concern, which, as Dan from this video from 6 years ago says, it's a synonym for compassion. But I believe that he might, if you were to ask him the same question today, he might say that compassion and empathic concern have slight differences to them. But we don't really have to concern ourselves with that right now. Empathically concern ourselves with that right now. But compassion, empathic concern is basically compassion, right? For the sake of our argument, for the all intents and purposes here, that the empathic concern is that when I feel you, and when I notice in that feeling that there is pain, that there is suffering happening, that you are struggling in some way, the empathic concern is not only the feeling of that, because that's the resonance, right? I've already felt that, right? But the empathic concern or compassion that steps in at that point, once I notice that there is suffering, it is the word compassion, comes from the Latin, which means the Latin phrase that means to suffer with, right? So it's like, I am with you in this moment of suffering. I am here. And then the empathic concern is taking that just one little step further and saying, is there anything I can do right now to support you in your pain and in your suffering? And sometimes there's nothing we can do. Right? Sometimes just letting someone know that we feel it and we're here to support them in any way we can, even though we can't, is enough, right? It still is very, very helpful if somebody knows that you're here trying to contribute to the reduction of their suffering. I often use this, the idea of like when you're watching TV and you see like a flood, where you see everybody's houses are underwater. There's nothing that I can do for those people. Sure, I can jump online and send, $10 to the Red Cross or whatever it is, right? But it doesn't mean that I have to go out there and, get in my car and drive down there and start rebuilding houses, because I'm not able to do that. And if I tried to do that, my life would fall apart, and then I wouldn't be able to function, and I would, it wouldn't work, right? So while empathic concern is an action-oriented fact or state, it doesn't mean that the action is the empathy or the concern, right? It's more of standing in a willingness to support. That's the best way that I believe to kind of phrase it. Now, number 5 is sort of the flip side of that, which is empathic joy. Think about that. How often do we feel another's happiness? How often do we let somebody's happiness resonate with us? Quite often it's the opposite. Sometimes we see, if we're having a rough day or something and we see somebody, who's happy, we feel like, man, I got to make them unhappy because their happiness is pissing me off, right? So imagine a world in which we were all, resonant and feeling the joy that each other is experiencing. And we applaud and support that joy in the same way we would support the suffering. Imagine a world where we did that. Now, this brings us back down to that intrapersonal aspect, right? Because remember, in order to experience any of this empathy, we must first be open to it. And the only way we can become open to this type of empathy is to reduce our own judgments, to reduce our own, to be present and to be aware of what we are going through. Right? In a very real way. And I mean, again, this is scientifically unambiguously shown that empathy is not, even though it is always about the other person, the power and the skill of empathy rests on my own self-awareness. And the only way I can cultivate self-awareness is through, quieting down the mind. Not quiet. The thoughts never stop, right? It's not like you turn anything down, but the ability to not be lost in it. The ability to be grounded here in what is here, to be present with the other person. Right? That's the first step. We can't have empathy if we're not able to be present. And we're not able to be present if we're judging, because once we judge, the good we cling to, the bad we resist, and now we're in this struggle and we're in this internal and intrapersonal struggle that prevents and precludes us from reaching this openness that allows me to feel you. Now, here's another beautiful thing, right? So we talk about how, the first step is to cultivate this self-awareness and this ability to regulate ourselves and the ability to live without judgment and without aversion and clinging, right? Which is just simple practices, very, very simple stuff, okay? 12-week program I do, and people come out of this, completely different. And I offer actually a year of support on top of that 12 weeks. So it's not a big deal. Like 1 year and you won't even recognize yourself. Okay, really. That's how simple this work can be if you have the right motivation and the right accountability and the right, education, which is what a coach does. But anyway, so we have this first step of having to, really kind of, get in touch with ourselves. And remember, within 12 weeks, I do both, right? It's not just 12 weeks or year of internal. It's, half of that. And then the other half is the intrapersonal, or interpersonal, pardon me, right? So the idea then is that we take that first step of intrapersonal work, then we bring it into interpersonal work, right? Where we're bringing this ability and then applying it in this empathic sense, right? To the empathic resonance, the perspective taking, the cognitive empathy, the empathic joy, the empathic concern, right? Which is more of that applies to the group, that applies to the network of people in our lives. Which is then the beautiful thing, right? Because now we take this beautiful, thing that we've cultivated throughout our work days, and now we bring that out into the world around us. We bring it to our friends and our families and to the clerks in grocery stores. I cannot tell you how beautiful my experiences in grocery stores have become. I mean, I love going to the grocery store because it's an opportunity for me to get these beautiful human connections that just, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And then what happens is that this becomes a feedback loop. Right? So I'm always experiencing this beautiful sense of connection, which then I bring back inside. And I heal and I grow within this. And then it's just, it just gets more and more beautiful and more powerful and more just, you just come to understand that this is what it's all about, right? And that's why I say my whole worldview, my politics, my spirituality, it's all about empathy, kindness, and compassion. because in order to get to those things, we must do the intrapersonal work. Yeah. So you can just imagine how cultivating these skills, and again, and this is just one aspect of the whole thing, right? I mean, we talked about kindness, which is another whole, vast sea of beautiful, work that we could do. And I shouldn't even call it work. It's really much more like play than it is work. But the point is that you can imagine how this can really shift everything, right? Internally, externally, intrapersonally, interpersonally, and how it becomes the sort of the drumbeat of our lives, that this is what really matters. Because really, and the reason why this is so important, and the reason why empathy is so powerful within an organization, is because empathy is essentially the art, if you will, of feeling felt, or the essence of feeling felt. Just sit with that for a second. How important is it that we matter to others? There's nothing more important. The whole ability to connect with each other is rests on that foundation, that you matter to me and I matter to you. How I feel matters to you. How you feel matters to me. When I see you, and the thing that the reason why this works, or one of the ways that we see this shift, is that when we see somebody do something that's rude or unkind or dysregulated or any of these things, any of these negative aspects that in an unskilled workplace just becomes drama and conflict, right? But if we can see that, if we can see when one of our coworkers is dysregulated and saying something that's unkind to somebody, again, if we can take that perspective and get into the way that they're thinking and judging and what's going on in their lives, then it becomes something that we don't need to respond to. We don't need to, fight fire with fire and get into this combative place. We can forgive and we can work with it. Now, that doesn't mean that we let somebody off the hook and that we don't hold people accountable, but we do so in a way that is empathic, that it takes all of this into account. And again, the end result is more harmony, more cooperation, more profit, more productivity. I mean, this is real stuff. This isn't just some woo-woo concept. I don't mean to insult woo-woo. I love woo. I got a lot of woo-woo friends, trust me. But that's not what this is. This is foundational to the actual functioning of the day-by-day brick-and-mortar lives that we live. And this is also where we see the connection between the woo-woo, quote-unquote, spirituality and the real world. I mean, there is no difference. It's not two separate things. That's a deeper conversation. Maybe we'll have that some other time. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know we're doing these now about 25 minutes or so, and I guess they've just gone to the regular length. They were meant to be short, but it's not working out that way. We'll see what happens in the future. Anyway, I wish you all well, and thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it is informative and helpful for you. I'll be talking more about this in the coming episodes, and just let me know how you think, though. Okay, let me know how this lands for you, because I really do want to resonate, with you in this empathy, right? Of I want to know how, if this is what is sort of resonating with you. Well, that's important for me to know somehow. It's because it matters, because you matter to me. Okay, and so. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I wish you well, and I'll be back again soon. Next Friday for sure with this Casual Fridays podcast. But check out the Showing Up to Life podcast too. There's lots of, there's not a separation really between these, right? We're just talking about work in this one. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll be back soon. Take care.